I would like to acknowledge that this video is being filmed on the traditional lands of the Wurrundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander or First Nations people who may be watching this video today. Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a books beside my bed video for you where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. So this is my reading week from the 16th until the 22nd of July. I read a total of 7 things this week, plus a few extra things that I'm going to include in some of the rest of my stats that I'm not talking about in this video specifically, but will be coming out in future videos over the next couple of weeks. I read a total of 3,099 pages and my yearly reading total is 346 books. Alright, this was also the week of the Love in the Night Readathon, which is a paranormal romance readathon that I helped co-host. It was created by Shae and I was one of the co-hosts alongside Temecka, Izzy and Laura. At this stage, I don't think I'm going to make the live show just because of time zone differences, but that's totally fine because I've just thoroughly enjoyed my week of reading paranormal romance books and helping to recommend things to other people. So I'm just thrilled to be part of it, honestly, because paranormal romance is my happy place. So all 7 books that I'm going to talk to you about in this video are paranormal romance books. Some of them are paranormal, some of them lean more into the monster romance category, which is honestly just a subgenre of paranormal romance anyway. The first book that I'm going to talk about is The Demonslayer by Jessica Gaziella. This is book 4 in the Seven Sins MC series. This is a demon motorcycle club romance series. And in this one, we have a demon who has found his mate who happens to be a demon slayer. So obviously that's a perfect match, right? So Minos is a demon biker and he found his mate much earlier in the series. Her name is Dale. She's a demon slayer. And they have this relationship where they know that they shouldn't have feelings for one another, and yet whenever they're around each other, like they cannot keep their hands off each other. And in this case, when they spend too much time apart, they just need to spend time together. And so that's how the book kicks off. But throughout this book, Dale has to really question who she is, what her role as a demon slayer is, and who her real enemies are. And yes, some of them are still demons. This is not a demon slayer suddenly converts to loving all demons. She begins to recognize which are the demons that are her true purpose in having to find and hunt, and perhaps there are some demons who might be allies. We also get a better look at the organization that trains demon slayers and their role and what is happening with them, and there's something big that happens in this book, and honestly it was just really fun. It's only about 250 pages long, so it's a super short one. Do recommend reading the other books before you get to this one, but I really enjoyed it. Then I read 2 books by Vera Valentine in her Carnal Cryptids series. So the first book is East Coast, the second is Southeast. They are all MMMF, polyamorous monster relationships. The primary relationship are the relationship between the men, and the woman is introduced into that group. I think the blurb calls them reverse harem stories. I actually don't think that's the case because particularly in the first book, the relationship between the men is fully established before she even enters the scene. I'm going to give a caution with the first book as well. This book really does feature dubious consent. The men in the series are cryptids or urban legends who exist because people fear them, and the heroine in this story essentially is like a supernatural battery, and being around her supercharges the monsters or the cryptids, or I think they're called concepts in this world. They scare the ever-living crap out of her, and she is terrified for the majority of the book because they assume that because they have claimed her that a bond would kick in, because they're not sure how this bond between these, supernatural supercharged battery people work. They thought that she would understand once that bond kicked in, and she really doesn't. A lot of people have felt uncomfortable with the power dynamic in this book and the fact that she is so scared for the majority of the time. I'm taking it with a grain of salt. I have read things where I actually think this has been done so much worse in other books, and in context with the setup of this world and these characters, it made sense why that was happening, but I know it will make a lot of people feel very, very uncomfortable. So consider it a dark paranormal monster romance and go from there. So essentially this is about Desiderata, who is a young woman. She works on the boardwalk during the summer season, and after work one evening she decides to go and have a drink at the bar. And there she meets JD. He is a bartender. He is very, very attractive, and they are flirting with each other while she's there. And then 5 minutes later she sees him making out with a guy around a corner. And she leaves and thinks, okay, that's it. She's a bit annoyed that he was flirting with her because he's clearly in some kind of relationship. And then she wants to stop thinking about him, but she really can't. And then the next day, while she is working, she is approached by another very handsome guy. His name is Penn. He invites her out on a date, but he doesn't invite her out on a date with him. He invites her out on a date with all 3 of the men. So you have JD, Will, and Pen. He's very upfront and says that they are in a relationship and they would like to spend some time with her. She thinks it's weird, but she's willing to go with it for the dinner. And actually the dinner sequence is really, really cute because JD really likes cooking, she really likes cooking, and so they're all cooking together in their kitchen, which I actually really like that scene. That's before anything else kicks off. What she quickly finds out though after that scene is that they are not actually men, they are concepts, which are the monsters of this world. They tend to say they don't like the term monsters, they prefer concepts. And concepts are urban legends or cryptids who have gained power and come into existence because of the belief of other people, and usually that belief stems from fear. I'm not going to say which urban legends and things are featured in either of these books because I think it's more interesting to go into it. Obviously, some of these are very US specific, so I did not know all that much about them. So there was a little bit of Googling going on in the background while I was reading the book, but I was very invested because I don't think I've read anything quite like this. Although that said, I think if you like something like The Lady of Rook's Grave Manor, you'll probably enjoy this story in terms of the combination of characters that are very different but all work together cohesively in a whole. But yes, do keep in mind the caution from the start of me talking about this book, because if that is not your thing, this is not the book for you. I personally found it really fascinating. I just loved the idea behind the story. I then followed it up because I didn't realize that the second book was already out. The second book is Southeast. This follows Desi's best friend Jess, who happened to have been kidnapped and terrified by monsters in the first book. But she has sort of formed this reluctant friendship with one of her abductors turned protectors from that event in the first book. And his name is Dov, and for some reason he's able to exist around her, where previously he thought he wouldn't be able to, so you have to read the book to understand why. But they're sort of starting to get to know one another, and then Will literally stumbles into their life. And Will is a human who has recently been turned into a concept. He doesn't even know what a concept is. He doesn't know what he is capable of. He doesn't even know which concept is inhabiting his body, and so they have to try and figure that out together. They end up on a road trip. They end up crossing paths with Eli, who was someone from Dov's past who had offered to help him in the past, and then they end up being chased by a very power-hungry concept who wants more power and thinks that he's going to get that by claiming Will. So this one was kind of fun, and it was interesting because Jess's role within this group is different to Desi's role in the first group. It's less about her fearing the three men in this book than it was in Desi's case. The difference being Desi's all three men in the first book are all very, very, very powerful concepts, whereas I don't feel like you have that same level of power with the second book. They're more sort of mid-range, average concepts, which changes the dynamic a little bit. I do want to say the second book does deal with some PTSD on the case of Dov and also on Jess's part, so be aware of that going into it. Then I read 3 books in the Mystic Bayou series by Molly Harper. How to Date Your Dragon was the group pick for the readathon, so I decided to reread it. I listened to it on audio while I was doing some jobs around the house. I absolutely loved it, so I have talked about this many times before. It is essentially a paranormal romance shifter series where you have Gillian, who has been sent to Mystic Bayou as a researcher to research how a community of magique or magic beings have learnt to coexist and live together. She's there to write a paper on it in the hopes that her research will then be able to help other communities to form and to thrive the way that Mystic Bayou has. She has the reluctant help of the town sheriff, Bale Boone, who very quickly rapidly realizes that he has an attraction and it could possibly be that Gillian is his fated mate. And she spends the whole time trying to figure out what kind of shifter he is. The title is fairly obvious in this book. Anyway, they're super fun, very cozy feeling paranormal romance books. So I had read that before. I was actually up to book 4, so I have read book 4, which is Always Be My Banshee. This one was also really fun. This is about Cordelia, who is a touch-no psychic, so she touches things or people and she finds out all their secrets. Obviously, this has the flow-on effect that she quite literally can't really touch anything or anyone without knowing everything about them. And so she really hasn't had human contact for a long time for that reason, because she doesn't always want to know people's deepest, darkest secrets. She has been sent to Mystic Bayou in order to find out more about an object that is at the center of the rift, which is in this town, which is causing some magical instability. And she's partnered with a rare male banshee called Brendan. And what they quickly find out is that both their powers kind of cancel out each other's, and that Cordelia can actually touch Brendan without knowing everything, because technically banshees are not living. And the whole thing was just really cool. I love anything with a banshee mythology in here and seeing what is used and played with. And I also liked Brendan. There is also a subplot going in here with Cordelia's past and the fact that she's quite estranged from her mother and had quite an antagonistic relationship with her, and this has coloured the way that she interacts with some people and how she's very cautious and closed off in relationships. But together, Cordelia and Brendan have to sort of figure out what's going on with this object, why it's in the center of the rift, and why somebody might be trying to steal it. And then I read One Fine Fae, which is a novella that takes place after book 4, so it's book 4.5. This is super short, it's only about 100 pages long. This one is about Charlotte, who is a half fairy midwife who has come to Mystic Bayou because she's been hired to oversee the birth of Gillian and Bale's child. They happen to have a dragon phoenix cross child. The birth promises to be very challenging because technically dragons are born via a giant metal egg, and Charlotte's a little bit nervous about that because she's never helped with a dragon birth before. And it's really cute. She meets Leonard in town. Leonard is a human who happens to have been cursed by a fairy in generations past in his family, and so he's very wary of her because she is part fairy. But they both obviously have an attraction to one another, and so she decides to see if she can figure out a way to help free him from this curse. And then last but not least for now, I read Storm Echo. This arrived this week. I was so excited. I purposely didn't talk about the fact that I had requested a review copy of this book for obvious reasons. I wasn't expecting to get it, but the Australian publisher did actually get back to me and say no, they would be happy to send me a copy, and they did, and I'm very, very grateful that I have had a chance to read this a couple of days before it comes out. This is book 6 in the Side Trinity series. It is book 21 overall in the Side Changeling series, and I honestly really, really enjoyed it. It's so nice to be back in this world. We're back in San Francisco in this book, but we follow Ivan Mercant, who is the cousin of Silver Mercant. Technically, the Mercant family lives in Russia, from memory, but we find out that Ivan believes that he has a monster inside of him and is very reluctant to let his powers and his monster out. The monster came about because while his mother was pregnant with him, she was on the drug Jax, which we've learnt about through the series has quite a negative effect on psi abilities. And so this has really shaped his life. So the book opens, he's in his early 30s, and he's kind of the enforcer for the Mercant family, but he also has his own agenda and his own moral code. So there is an element of a morality chain in here, which we all know I love. We find out that he has spent a little bit of time in the US training with some of the changeling packs, and while he's in the States, he meets this woman in the woods, and she is a changeling healer. But then something happens and their paths diverge. And the next time that he sees her, she doesn't remember who he is, but she now has her own plan of vengeance against another changeling pack. I just honestly really, really enjoyed this. I loved that we got to see more of some of these other side characters. I love the Mercant family. We got to see more of Ina Mercant in this book. We also got to spend more time with Tammy and Nathan from the Dark River pack and the twins, and I just love that. Tammy and Nathan are one of my favorite couples in the series. They don't have their own book, they do have a novella, but I love it whenever they pop up in books. And obviously Tammy, being the primary healer for Dark River, is how she gets to know the heroine in the story. So I'm not going to talk too much more about it because I am going to do a full video. I want to do another reread before I do that, because every other book in my Side Changeling series I've actually read at least twice. So I've tabbed it all up. I'm going to do another close read, and that video will hopefully be coming in the next week or so. All right, so those are the books I've read in the past week. In the comments, I'd love to know if you have read any of them or if you're planning on picking any of them up. I'd also love to know if you participated in the Love in the Night Readathon and what your favorite books have been from the readathon. Otherwise, if you want to let me know that you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave a weather icon emoji in the comments. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.